This program is made possible by a grant from the LaSalle Bank and by the individual members of the Lincoln Academy of Illinois. From the historic Field Museum of Natural History in Chicago, the Lincoln Academy of Illinois presents the 2007 Convocation and Investiture of Laureates. A tireless volunteer whose life's work has given back to her community and provided national leadership on children's issues. A banking executive who leads by example in his commitment to community service and improving the quality of life in the city of Chicago. A pastor whose inclusive message inspires his congregation to reach out to the less fortunate at home and abroad. A pioneer in the courtroom who became the first woman to serve on Illinois' highest court and later serve as Chief Justice. A media executive whose publishing empire has increased African Americans' pride in themselves by presenting their past and present achievements to America and the world. Since its first convocation and investiture of laureates in 1965, the Lincoln Academy of Illinois has recognized more than 200 people who have brought honor to their state in the spirit of that most famous Illinoisan, Abraham Lincoln. As laureates of the Lincoln Academy, each person represents a lifetime commitment to leadership and service to humanity.
The mission of the Lincoln Academy is to continue the legacy of Abraham Lincoln by finding worthy Illinoisans to receive the Order of Lincoln, which is the state's highest award. It's to thank them for what they've done for the community and also to encourage others to emulate what they have done in their own lives.
The Lincoln Academy of Illinois was patterned upon the learned academies of Europe. It is unique among the 50 United States. Members of the nonpartisan, not-for-profit academy are appointed by the governor, who also serves as its president. Each fall, the Academy meets to select the laureates who are to receive the Order of Lincoln Medallion the following spring. The state's highest honor for individual achievement, its colors of red, violet, and green symbolize the state bird, the cardinal, the state flower, the violet, and the leaves of the state tree, the oak. In addition to its laureates, the Lincoln Academy of Illinois also recognizes future leaders by honoring the outstanding senior students at each of Illinois' four-year degree-granting institutions in ceremonies held each fall at the old Illinois State Capitol.
We regret that the president of the Academy, Governor Rod Blagojevich, is unable to attend this convocation. With us in his stead is Dr. Rick Beard, Executive Director of the Abraham Lincoln Presidential Library and Museum. Now for the key part of our convocation, the traditional ceremony when we recognize the work of distinguished Illinoisans, both by birth and by residence. I now ask that Peter Bensinger, a laureate and general trustee of the Academy, read the citation for Laureate Judith Block. Trustee Bensinger.
Born in Cleveland, Ohio, Judith S. Block is a community leader whose 4 decades of volunteer service have improved educational, recreational, and social service opportunities for those living in Chicago and beyond. Judy has served on dozens of boards and in committees of civic organizations, educational institutions, and commissions, and for a quarter of a century was active in United Way. A trustee of the Field Museum since 1986, she was elected chairman of the board in 1997, the first woman to hold that position. Judy Block has been especially devoted to protecting society's most vulnerable children. She's been a director of the Chicago Child Care Society since 1968 and has served as its president. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it is my privilege to present to you as a laureate of the Lincoln Academy of Illinois, Judith S. Block.
Judith Block remembers very well an early morning telephone call informing her that Sue the Tyrannosaurus Rex was coming to Chicago's Field Museum of Natural History.
I believe it was Jim Croft on the other line, our Vice President of Finance, who said, "Well, you're the proud mother of a new dinosaur." And that was how I found out that we had this great specimen coming to the museum.
Bringing Sue to Chicago is one of the many highlights in Judith Block's long commitment to community service and civic leadership. A former school teacher, Block says she first became involved in child welfare issues as a member of the Chicago Child Care Society.
It was really the first thing I ever became involved in when I was a bride, I really had never done a lot of community service. You know, I was 28 years old or 29. It's a great organization and was formed in during the Teddy Roosevelt administration. It's one of these organizations that they said if it wasn't founded, you'd have to found one, or if it didn't exist, you'd have to create it. And it's a very important national presence and a voice for children across the country.
Block served on the Citizens Committee for the Juvenile Court and spent 7 years as a court-appointed special advocate for abused and neglected children as their cases navigated the legal system.
Chicago Child Care Society was a member of the Child Welfare League of America, which is it's a membership organization for all the quality child-serving agencies in the country, and does the advocacy in Washington and publishes all the great work in child welfare, etc. So I was asked to serve on that board, and then I became subsequently president of Chicago Child Care. Then I went on the Child Welfare League board in Washington, and I was on that board for 15 or 18 years, and I went on to be chairman of the board in Washington, the Child Welfare League board in Washington. And then you really get a picture of the whole nation and the issue related to having so many children that need a helping hand. And so it became a part of my heart, you know, and continues.
Block devoted 25 years of service to the United Way of Metropolitan Chicago as board member, board secretary, and leader of a variety of committees and activities, including the Crusade of Mercy.
I believe so firmly that participation creates interest. Sometimes you follow your interest, but sometimes you blindly go into something and it becomes a passion. And I think that that's probably more the way I became so involved at the Field.
Block became involved with the Field Museum as a member of its Women's Board in 1975. She became a trustee of the Field in 1986, and in 1997, she became the first woman to head the museum's Board of Trustees.
I believe that women should have every right that men do, just as most of us do in today's world. But to me, it was just an opportunity to lead, an opportunity to do something more creative with my volunteer life, to help the museum take the next step in excellence, and to be along for the ride of continuing to make us one of the 4 great natural history museums in the world, which we are and have been for many years.
The decision to acquire Sue was among the first in a series of major issues to confront Block as chair, but she considers the development of a strategic plan for the Field as one of her most important accomplishments.
It was serendipitous that she came, but that we spent a long part of my tenure doing a long-range plan for the museum and the direction we wanted to go.
The strategic plan laid the groundwork for a major capital campaign for the Field, the renovation of major exhibit halls, and construction of a new underground storage area for the Field's ever-growing collections. The Field's research, education, and outreach programs are truly global in scope and impact, but the museum has never lost sight of a fundamental mission: inspiring a lifelong love of learning among countless children.
There are many museums where children have to be taught to appreciate what they're seeing. But one can walk into this museum and see Sue in the middle of Stanley Field Hall, and one's imagination just begins to run wild. Sue has become the icon for our museum, and it's funny that she's only, 15 years old, or I don't know, can't remember exactly, but when you think that our museum, is well over 100 years old, that we have many icons. We have, and when a child walks in and sees a a family of deer in a lovely woodland setting, and one that they can really look at and study and appreciate without having the deer run away as they would in a zoo, and not to denigrate zoos or anything like that, but it's really a thrilling time for children to learn about our natural habitat.
Reflecting on 40 years of volunteerism in Chicago, Judith Block says it's not enough just to care about an issue. You've got to participate to truly make a difference.
Just the opportunity to be a community participant, to just know what's going on, to care about what's going on. You have to participate before you can care, And so I don't take any credit for any of it. I have a lot of energy, and I love to learn, and I love to serve. And so these opportunities for volunteerism have selfishly, I feel, broadened my understanding of our society and our city and the needs that we all hope that we can meet. And so tonight, as you honor me, I in turn honor those volunteers who take the time to mentor a troubled youth, to tutor children in our schools, to help teen moms who made one mistake find their way, graduate from high school and go on to college, and get a master's in social work at the University of Chicago, as did my friend Lillian Harris. I honor those who advocate in court for those youngsters in foster care so that they can move into permanent, stable, and loving homes. I honor those who race for the cure, or work to protect our environment, or clean up our parks, or deliver meals to the homebound elderly, or teach English as a second language, or catalog artifacts in our museums, or build homes for the homeless. These volunteers are healing the fractured part of our society, nurturing its artistic fabric, filling the gaps in service that government cannot fill, and creating the solutions necessary to realize Abraham Lincoln's dream of a united country where all citizens participate and benefit equally from their efforts. Thank you to the Lincoln Academy from my heart for this wonderful honor.
Born in the Hyde Park neighborhood of Chicago, Norman R. Bobbins is a corporate and civic leader who during his 40-year career has made both banking and people his business. Norman Bobbins has overseen an extended period of growth at the LaSalle Bank, making it not only the second largest bank in Chicago, but also a major Midwestern leading commercial bank. During Norman's tenure, LaSalle has been much more than a thriving financial institution. It has been an extraordinary corporate citizen. Mr. Bobbins has led by example. He serves on many boards, both civic and charitable, far too many to mention this evening, but let me just mention a few. The Chicago Board of Education, the Terra Foundation of American Art, the Art Institute of Chicago, the Field Museum, and the Children's Brain Research Foundation. He is former chairman of the Chicagoland Chamber of Commerce, the chairman emeritus of the Illinois Business Roundtable, and a member of the Civic Committee of the Commercial Club of Chicago. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it is truly my great privilege to present to you as a laureate of the Lincoln Academy of Illinois, Mr. Norman R. Bobbins.
Norman Bobbins was being groomed to take over the family business after earning an MBA from the University of Chicago in 1967. But his father thought he needed some real-world experience under his belt first.
The family business was started by my grandfather in the 30s. And it was a manufacturing business, and it made men's tie clips, tie bars, and belt buckles. So I took a job with the old American National Bank, June of 1967. And I thought I'd stay in banking for a year or two because a bank was a place that you could observe a lot of different things in business and get some real experience. Well, I had a ball. I found banking very intellectually stimulating. It gave you a great chance to work with people. I really liked the relationship side of banking. The fact that you got to know people, they got to know you, you got to know their business, they trusted you, you were able to help them. It's a great feeling.
Bobbins joined the Exchange National Bank of Chicago in 1981 and had risen to senior executive vice president and chief lending officer when the bank was acquired by the former LaSalle National Corp., now LaSalle Bank Corporation, in 1990.
The bank was started right here on LaSalle Street. That's where it took its name. But it really didn't grow very much. It was bought by the Dutch in 1979. And at the time it was bought by the Dutch, it was about a $1 billion bank. Even then, from 1979 to 1990, the bank only grew from about $1 billion to about $6 billion in size. In 1990, the Dutch bought a second bank, the bank I came from, that was directly across the street, and put the two banks together. From 1990 to today, we've gone from that $6 billion level to about $125 billion. So we've had a great run the last 15 or 16 years.
Bobbins was named president and CEO of LaSalle Bank in 1991. Under his leadership, LaSalle grew into the second largest bank in Chicago.
Medium-sized companies are the bread and butter of the LaSalle Bank. And truthfully, they're the backbone of this country in an industrial sense. That's where the real growth is, and that's where the fun in banking is. That's where you have a chance to really contribute to your client's success. That's where relationships matter.
Throughout his banking career, Bobbins has been a firm believer in giving back to the community.
The bank that lives in this city succeeds if the city succeeds. It's that simple. Or let's stretch it, the state succeeds, because I don't mean to be so narrow. All right? And so I've always felt that it's incumbent on bankers to give back to the community that supports them and nurtures them.
Long active with the Chicagoland Chamber of Commerce, the Illinois Business Roundtable, and Civic Committee of the Commercial Club of Chicago, Bobbins is no stranger to civic engagement. He has been a member of the Chicago Board of Education since 1995.
I really enjoy my time on the Board of Education. It's been a wonderful experience, and the goal of the Board of Education is to provide a meaningful education so that people want to live in the city of Chicago and feel comfortable sending their kids to school in the city of Chicago and comfortable that they'll get a good education. Well, if I can help do that, that makes the city much more successful.
Bobbins says the benchmarks are proving that Chicago's school reform is working.
First of all, I think we've done a good job of managing expenses. And I'm not telling you that's the end-all and be-all, but I will tell you expenses were out of control. I think second of all, we have done a good job of improving curriculum. I think we've done a good job of improving the capabilities of the teachers in the system. And I think it's showing up in the net results. I'm not a big fan of test scores, but you have to have some benchmark. I think if you look at the test scores over the last 10 years, I think they'll attest to the fact that we're doing better and better.
Bobbins has also shared his expertise with numerous charitable and philanthropic organizations in the Chicago area. In 2006, LaSalle Bank and its employees raised nearly $2.7 million for the United Way of Metropolitan Chicago.
I'm a very big believer in the United Way. United Way came to me and asked if we would be the lead horse in the challenge grant. So besides our annual contribution, besides our employees' contribution, we were able to make a one-time $1 million contribution. So you're seeing the effects of all three of those things at one time. Now, I can't do that every year. I mean, it's just not practical. But we're doing everything to encourage our employees to participate. And I am certainly encouraging Bank of America to continue at least at the level of contributing we've been at. And I'd like to see them increase it.
An enthusiastic supporter of public broadcasting, Bobbins has served on the board of WTTW Television and WFMT-FM in Chicago since 1999.
I love public television. I love the fact that public television does not have to deal in the same way with the marketing forces that impact commercial television, that it has the luxury of doing some things, not just for the ratings, but for the good of what they can contribute. There are certainly two other stations in this country that I think of as leaders, New York and Boston. And my goal while I'm on this board is to see us, Channel 11, be put in that category.
Norman Bobbins is retiring upon completion of the sale of LaSalle Bank to Bank of America and plans to devote even more time to charitable and civic activities.
I have agreed to play a more active role at WTTW, at the Field Museum, and maybe at the Jewish Federation. So, I think so. During the past 4 decades, I've been truly fortunate to work with great clients, great colleagues, and great supporters of Chicago and Illinois. And speaking of supporters, I want to say a special thank you this evening to my family. I could not have had the fulfilling career that I have enjoyed without the support and love of my wife, Virginia, sitting down in front, and my son, Robert, sitting over here on my right. Without them, it just would not have been possible. Now, as you know, the person for whom this award is named, Abraham Lincoln, left a powerful imprint on Illinois, on America, and indeed on the world. And although he died 142 years ago, in fact, I believe on this very day, April 14th, he continues to guide us on how to live a life of integrity, to serve others, to deal with adversity, to summon courage, and pursue what is right. It is for these reasons and many others that I am really humbled to be singled out for this award. So all I can tell you is thank you very, very much.
Native of Altoona, Pennsylvania, the Reverend Dr. John M. Buchanan leads Chicago's historic Fourth Presbyterian Church. First and foremost, John Buchanan is a pastor. He began his ministry after studies at the University of Chicago Divinity School as pastor to 2 other congregations before coming to Fourth Presbyterian in 1985. He preaches and promotes in all aspects of his ministry an expansive and generous vision of the gospel. He describes this as God's inclusive love for all people. Fourth Pres extends itself beyond its walls to denominational programs, overseas missions, and especially through Chicago Lights, which has an array of social services for the disadvantaged. He is president of McCormick Theological Seminary's Board of Trustees and is editor and publisher of the interdenominational magazine, The Christian Century, for which he writes a regular column. John is an extraordinary preacher, an exemplary pastor, and a tremendous human being. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it is my privilege to present to you as a laureate of the Lincoln Academy of Illinois, the Reverend Dr. John M. Buchanan.
Christian faith doesn't call us out of the world, but in a very real way calls us into the world in the name of Christ. So we're not a closeted, cloistered version of Christianity. We're worldly. We've got the doors and windows open, and we feel that we need to be out there engaged in the world.
At Chicago's historic Fourth Presbyterian Church, the Reverend Dr. John Buchanan leads a congregation of nearly 5,800 people who thrive on meeting the challenges of ministering to those in need.
People come here with business in mind. They want to hear something that's worth listening to. They come here with high intentionality, and that just, I want to say inspires me, but it fills me with a sense that this is an important, we're engaged here, it's very important.
Reverend Buchanan's personal journey of faith is marked by an intense intellectual curiosity.
I was always comfortable in the church of my childhood, liked being around it, but as I matured, began to ask substantive intellectual questions about faith and belief and credibility and is this stuff true, and was compelled by the fact that Christian faith is intellectually challenging, and that the older I got, the more I realized that some of the most brilliant people in history were also compelled by the notion of God and by the Christian faith. And so it was, in that way, it was kind of a circuitous route, but it led me to the University of Chicago Divinity School, where a college advisor told me you could go without any risk to your future. They didn't particularly care whether you became a minister or not. They provided a theological education. Anyhow, I find myself being hooked intellectually and spiritually by the intellectual and academic rigor and honest faithfulness of the Divinity School.
The civil rights movement helped shape Buchanan's expansive vision of a Christian gospel that rejects what he calls exclusivist religious thinking and embraces God's inclusive love for all people.
As is the case with a lot of people my age, the compelling concept for me as I was developing as a young minister was the notion of racial inclusivity. We woke up in college to the notion of racism. It had just been an unconscious part of the life of this nation and our culture and my own life, and suddenly, in fact, it was in a college fraternity when someone suggested that we receive a young African-American man, and everyone went ballistic, including the National Fraternity Headquarters. Anyhow, that was a sobering experience for me. And then, of course, the civil rights movement emerged while I was in University Divinity School, and I became deeply involved in the life of a multiracial parish on the south side of Chicago, and deeply committed to the civil rights movement. So my notion of Christianity as kind of a public faith, and the church as a player in society was nurtured and formed in those exciting and difficult days.
Reverend Buchanan says many churches chose not to deal with the social upheaval of the 1960s, but not Fourth Presbyterian.
A lot of major metropolitan churches were closing their doors or locking their doors up tight. My predecessor, a great Welshman by the name of Elam Davies, did the exact opposite and opened the doors to this fairly elite, wealthy church, and brought in neighbors, brought in youngsters from Cabrini Green, started a counseling center. All of that, I think, in a wonderful way, refocused the attention of this church from itself to the world, where it ought to be anyhow. When I came, we realized that was something that we needed to do even more of and take more seriously, so we expanded that program from about 100 youngsters to about 450. And retained professional leadership for it, professional educators, and so it's now a very sophisticated tutoring program which brings into this wonderful Gothic building 400 plus youngsters from Cabrini and other urban neighborhoods now. We rent buses and haul kids in for an hour and a half or 2 hours of one-on-one tutoring with a volunteer once a week. That's important. We have a scholarship program for outstanding youngsters in that program, assuring them that if they can do it and want to do it, we'll stand with them as they go on to private schools or to higher education. Of course, it was controversial. Some people didn't like that, didn't think the church had any business doing that sort of thing, but it's my opinion that it saved this church's soul. And to this day, this church is shaped and formed by a gospel that just simply demands to be expressed outside in the streets of the city. So it could not be more important to us.
Today, nearly 40% of the church's annual budget goes to social service and mission projects. Chicago Lights, a nonprofit organization, operates a broad array of programs throughout the city's disadvantaged neighborhoods.
One of the amazing things about this place is that people come here because of that. They come here because they know when they sit in the pews of this place and put their money in the plate, it's going to make a difference in the quality of life in the world around us.
Reverend Buchanan was elected as moderator of the 208th General Assembly of the Presbyterian Church USA in 1996 and has served in many church leadership positions at home and abroad. In 1999, he became editor and publisher of the Christian Century, an interdenominational magazine.
We try to bring to print the very best thinking about the complicated theological and social and political issues of the day but always rooted in the basic good news of the Christian faith, of God's love in Jesus Christ.
After more than 2 decades at Fourth Presbyterian, Reverend Buchanan remains focused on the future.
I'm deeply committed to that Christian Century magazine. I'm deeply committed to the notion of joining heart and mind, and I have a sense that there are lots and lots of people out there who are hungry for that kind of encounter and that kind of resource. So I'm hopeful that I'll continue to do that. I think I've got some important work to do here. This church is growing; it's expanding beyond the boundaries of the building, and we need to strengthen this church for the next generation. And then, when that's done, I'll get out of the way.
This is a particular honor for me because I grew up in a home that valued books and reading and literature, and above all, history. My father, a railroader, a Pennsylvania railroad engineer, loved Abraham Lincoln. Read Carl Sandburg, told me Lincoln's stories, took me to Gettysburg as a child and showed me the cemetery and the very place where the great address was delivered, and so I have inherited my own interest. I cannot think of more important words in a time when religion is used for partisan political purposes, used as a weapon in ideological conflict, co-opted of all things to rationalize and justify and inspire violence. I don't know of more relevant words for the nation, for all of us here this evening to ponder, than these which he spoke 142 years ago, almost to the day. With malice toward none, with charity for all, with firmness in the right as God gives us to see the right, let us strive on to finish the work we are in, to bind up the nation's wounds, to care for him who shall have borne the battle, and for his widow and his orphan, to do all which may achieve and cherish a just and a lasting peace among ourselves and with all nations. Thank you for listening to me, and thank you for this honor.
Mary Ann McMurrow was born in Chicago, Illinois, educated in the classrooms of Illinois, graduated from one of the great law schools of Illinois, and has brought honor to the people of Illinois by a lifetime of service to the cause of justice. The legal profession was not particularly receptive to women lawyers when Justice McMurrow first joined its ranks. She had been the only woman in her law school graduating class. She went on to break ground for women lawyers everywhere, and descriptions of her inevitably include words like first, best, only. In the rough and tumble world of Chicago's criminal courts, she was the first woman to prosecute major crimes. After first serving as a judge of the circuit court and then the appellate court, in 1992, she was the first woman in its 173-year history to be elected a justice of the Illinois Supreme Court. In 2002, she became the first woman to serve as Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, and as Chief Justice, the first woman to head one of the 3 branches of Illinois government, to receive the Order of Lincoln, a proud daughter of the land of Lincoln, the 115th Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of Illinois, the truly Honorable Mary Ann McMurrow.
Is that the essence of the jury's finding?
I believe so, Your Honor.
To the Honorable Mary Ann McMurrow, serving on the state's highest court was to live the impossible dream. When she entered the legal profession in the early 1950s, there were very few female attorneys and even fewer women serving on the bench.
I thought it was interesting that I got elected Chief Justice, the very court before which I was not permitted to argue. It was interesting.
As a teenager, the future Chief Justice McMurrow was drawn to the law by her love of debate.
During my high school days, I fell in with a group of other girls who were very similar in questioning things and enjoying debate. And we used to truly enjoy talking about things that had happened and things that we were told during the day and questioning those things. And it amounted to debating, actually. And then I got into the formal debate team. And when I had my friends over to my home, my mother listened in and later suggested to me that I might want to consider going to law school. That was really the first time I had thought of it, because during those days, women didn't go to law school.
Justice McMurrow was the only female law student to graduate from her class at Loyola University School of Law in 1953, where she was twice elected class president. She was appointed Assistant Cook County State's Attorney in 1955, becoming the first woman to prosecute major criminal cases.
Every imaginable kind of crime, from murder, robbery, rape, burglary, embezzlement, just about every crime, all the major felony crimes. I tried them all on a daily basis before judges or juries, both of them. It was a great experience for me.
Despite her extensive trial experience, McMurrow learned to her disappointment that she could not overcome the prejudices of her times.
The man who was the head of the appeals section at that time asked me if I would like to argue a case before the Supreme Court. And I, of course, was thrilled. I was a young lawyer, and it was unheard of, and I was very excited about it. And I prepared for it. I studied the case. I studied the briefs, all the arguments, and the law, and I was really all set. But then he thought, and rightfully so, that we should let the top boss know that I'm going down. So, we asked him if I could go, and the answer was, oh no. It was, oh no, women don't argue cases before the Supreme Court. And it was shut off very quickly and very decisively.
McMurrow won election to the Circuit Court of Cook County in 1976. She earned a reputation as a fair and compassionate judge in the Domestic Relations Division. Later, she presided over a wide variety of cases in the court's Law Jury Division.
Some of the cases involved areas that I had never practiced in, so they were interesting. I was learning new areas of the law, and had excellent lawyers appear before the court who argued well, who were well prepared, from whom I learned a great deal. And I enjoyed every day. Actually, I've enjoyed every minute of my entire career.
In 1985, McMurrow was appointed to the 1st District Appellate Court and was elected in her own right the following year. In 1992, she ran a successful campaign for Illinois Supreme Court, becoming the first woman on the state's high court in its 173-year history.
Glorious, wonderful, magnificent, joyous, relief, everything, all of them, but mostly gratitude, mostly appreciation that I did get elected, and that if I did well, women could follow, and they did.
In 2002, her colleagues elected McMurrow as Chief Justice.
I think it was important that the Supreme Court get what I would call a face. Most people don't know what the Supreme Court does. They don't know what kind of cases it hears. It doesn't know anything about its administrative duties or the fact that that court is responsible for all of the courts throughout the state. That court is responsible for the admission of attorneys to the bar, or censuring attorneys who are acting improperly. Its administrative duties are, I think, about 50% of its work, equal to the time we spend deciding cases. The public isn't aware of that.
As Chief Justice, McMurrow pushed for the use of alternative dispute resolution to ease the backlog of cases in the state's court system, as well as other reforms.
One of the, which I always thought was very important, was to change the law with respect to whether or not a lawyer can sell or bestow or bequeath to a surviving spouse. This law practice, if he or she died, it was unfortunate that the surviving spouse got nothing from what was left. And I thought that was a great injustice, so we did get that law changed.
Chief Justice Mary Ann McMurrow retired from the bench in 2006. Though modest about her own pioneering role in the legal profession, she's gratified by the progress that she's witnessed over the course of her career.
I think that I get the most satisfaction from seeing the doors open to everybody, women, people of color, different groups, just opening to everybody's welcome if you can perform, if you're competent. And that's extremely important, that you be competent. But if you are competent, I don't think you should be eliminated from consideration for any job, be it assistant state's attorney or public defender or counsel or judge or whatever. I just think that if you're competent, you should be given an equal opportunity.
Years ago, women were permitted to try only 3 types of cases: traffic, probate, and matrimonial disputes. But everything is opened up to us now, and we should take advantage of that. And this evening, I was reminded of that humorist and that lady who wrote some wonderful books, Irma Bombeck, and I don't know if any of you remember her, but she wrote that she hopes that when she dies and appears before her maker, that he or she, our maker could be a woman, you know. Bobby Kennedy always thought it was a woman, that she was prepared to tell her maker that she had no talent left. She brought nothing to him or her because she used it all up while she was here. And it's my hope that we too would also use up all the talents that we have. Thank you so very much.
A true daughter of Illinois, Linda Johnson Rice is the president and CEO of Johnson Publishing Company, one of the largest publishing companies in the world, and publisher of such magazines as Ebony and Jet. The daughter of Johnson Publishing founder John Johnson and fashion executive Eunice Johnson, Miss Rice credits her parents with instilling in her a fantastic work ethic, with the ideals of setting and achieving goals, with treating people fairly, and with trusting your instincts. The impact of Ebony and Jet on generations of African Americans is tribute to the Johnson family, and Miss Rice is now devoting increasing attention to issues that she believes of vital importance to the African American community, including economic justice and education. Ms. Rice's devotion to public service is evident through the many organizations on which she serves, including the University of Southern California, Northwestern Memorial Corporation, the Advisory Board for the National Underground Railroad Freedom Center, and the founding council of the National Museum of African American History and Culture. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I am privileged to present to you as a laureate of the Lincoln Academy, Ms. Linda Johnson Rice.
Anything that's happened of major significance to African Americans in the world, Ebony is there and Jet is there. Whether it's the March on Washington, whether it's Selma, Alabama, whether it was Condoleezza Rice being Secretary of State, or Barack Obama running for president, we are there. So anything that happens to African Americans that is of importance, we try to be there.
Linda Johnson Rice may have been groomed to take over the family business, but her parents insisted that she prove herself worthy. After earning a journalism degree from the University of Southern California, she worked her way up through the company in a variety of positions before being named president and chief operating officer at age 27. While working full-time, Rice attended night classes to earn an MBA at Northwestern University's Kellogg School of Management.
If you knew my father very well, there was no way that he was going to build the type of business that he built and turn it over to someone that he did not think was qualified. And being qualified means that you had to have the discipline to have the education and the discipline to work hard and the ethic that he was looking for, the work ethic that he was looking for. And also, it's the same with my mother. I mean, she instilled the exact same thing. It was education, it was hard work. You've got to come to work, you've got to be on time, you've got to contribute, you've got to be sensitive to people's issues and their needs, and you've got to listen to people. So none of this was just sort of handed to me. That's not the way they worked at all.
Times may have changed since John H. Johnson opened his fledgling publishing company, But Rice says the founding principles remain the same.
When Ebony was started in 1945, there was no magazine like Ebony and no concept or thought of a magazine like Ebony. It really was patterned after Life magazine. And what it was set up to do, and it still is the same as today, is it's a philosophy of success and achievement. It's very aspirational. But what we show is what is important to African Americans, their health, parenting, what happens in society, technology now, all sorts of different things that cut across all of their daily lives. That's what we write about. And Jet, which is our weekly news magazine, chronicles in 1 week time everything that's happened of importance to African Americans across the globe. You've got to have something that's current and contemporary and that affects people's lives. And also you're trying to impart with them in a week's time knowledge. Give them knowledge about what is going on affecting them in the world.
Linda Johnson Rice became CEO in 2002. Under her leadership, Johnson Publishing is developing new media channels and innovative content for the digital domain.
With ebonyjet.com, we have a completely different group of people that work on that. It's not the same people that work on the print material on the editorial side. There is an editor for the website, there is a chief digital strategist, and they in turn, just like we do on the magazines, bring in other writers and people who write blogs for the website, because you do have a different audience. It is a different audience, and that's an audience that we are trying to cultivate. And we also do it through advertising sales because, you know, we're in business. Not only do we want to impart knowledge and things that are positive, but also we are in business, you know, it's a money-making venture. I think the direction that we're going in really is to be more of a media business and more of a enterprise. Because we're doing things in licensing, because we're doing things in entertainment, we're going across multi-platforms with the website, with the magazines, and believe me, the Ebony and Jet are the engines that are driving the train on all of this. But I would say 5 to 10 years out, you're looking at much more than just a publishing company. You're looking at a media company, and a media company that is going to have impact still on the African American community, but across multi-platforms.
The Johnson family has a long tradition of philanthropy. Ebony Fashion Fair, the company's traveling fashion show founded by Eunice Johnson, has raised millions for charity since 1958.
Unbelievable clothes, beautiful models, but the bottom line really is that it is for charity. And it's really over $55 million that has been raised, and this is our 50th anniversary now for the Ebony Fashion Fair. And it's just been a fantastic vehicle for us to promote the magazine and also to promote charitable giving.
Rice is active in a variety of charitable and civic causes at home in her beloved Chicago, as well as the national scene.
We're a very, I think, civic-minded corporation and always have been. We're very involved with the United Negro College Fund. I sit on the board there. We are very involved with a lot of things that have to do with education, whether it's education in the art world, because I'm a trustee at the Art Institute. My father was a trustee at the Art Institute. We have the John H. Johnson School of Communications at Howard University, so we are creating budding journalists and communications majors. We have the Johnson Communications Leadership Center at the University of Southern California, so more journalists. So we're getting them in D.C. We're going to get them on the West Coast as well. So we've done a lot of things that are very, very civic-minded. And then in the city of Chicago, I cannot even begin to tell you the countless things that we have supported just in the city.
Rice says she feels blessed to have the responsibility of protecting and growing the legacy left to her by her parents, and loves the challenges of each new day on the job.
I have to tell you, I get a great deal of satisfaction with the people that I work with because I think they really enjoy what they do. They enjoy being here. They have tremendous ideas and great spirit, which I feed off of. And at the same time, we also love our readers. We love our audience. And we understand them. We have a great affinity and affection for them, and I think they do as well for us. So I enjoy coming and working with the people that I work with every day, and at the same time, I get to touch people that I don't even know.
Words cannot truly express my enthusiasm and sincere gratitude to the Lincoln Academy of Illinois for including me as a 2007 laureate. It touches me to have been selected among so many exceptional recipients. Not only those attending this evening's extravagant gala, but also past honorees. Renowned poet Gwendolyn Brooks, film critic Roger Ebert, famed journalist John Chancellor, NFL legend Walter Payton, and many other educators, scientists, government, and business leaders have passed this way as medallion recipients. And now, my name has been added to this list of distinction, along with my father, the late John H. Johnson, who was honored as a laureate just 1 year after the Medallion of Lincoln's inception in 1966. To me, the Medallion of Lincoln carries with it a magnificent responsibility. It is not only about what the medal means in terms of past achievements, but also about what we must do moving forward. This honor motivates me to continue my commitment to our community and hopefully inspire others to do the same. We are obligated to continue working in our respective labors of love, whether it's educating the masses, reducing violence, or strengthening our community, one person at a time. I accept this honor as a symbol of hope and inspiration on behalf of those who laid the strong foundation that others have followed, and for the future generations of those yet to come. Thank you.
Joining us on behalf of Governor Blagojevich is Dr. Rick Beard, Executive Director of the Abraham Lincoln Presidential Library and Museum. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor to present to you Dr. Rick Beard.
In thinking about what I might say tonight, I began with the desire to find a wonderfully pithy Lincoln quote upon which I might elaborate. I found just the right one. It goes like this, quote, "We should be too big to take offense and too noble to give it." Now that is, I'm sure you'll all agree, a sentiment worth embracing. When preparing what I would say this evening, I thought to double check, I would ask the Abraham Lincoln Presidential Library's greatest asset, Illinois State Historian Tom Schwartz, to track down the quote's source so I could share it with the audience, only to learn to my considerable dismay that this is another of the thousands of things Mr. Lincoln might have said, but apparently never did. What to do? A colleague, not Tom, I hasten to add, recommended that I use it anyway. It was simply too good to pass up, she felt, and no doubt Lincoln might have said it or something like it. But caution and the awareness that any number of you would no doubt find me out dictated another tack. Tonight, we celebrate the legacy of a man who still embodies the best that our country has ever had to offer in the public arena. A self-made man who never stopped learning, who bore personal tragedy with grace, who somehow found the fortitude and wisdom to find his way through a wrenching, no doubt seemingly endless war and complete the Second American Revolution. Lincoln continues to inspire us all to offer a model of probity, leadership, and magnanimity that few could ever hope to equal. There's no better time than the present to look to Lincoln. In less than a year, the celebration of the bicentennial of his birth begins. Plans for a national celebration are at last taking shape, and Illinois is moving ahead rapidly with plans for a statewide program of exhibitions, festivals, educational activities, and legacy projects. He, like the 5 laureates we honor this evening, represent the very best our state has to offer. These 5 men and women, Norman Bobbins, Justice Mary Ann McMorrow, Lyndon Johnson Rice, the Reverend John Buchanan, and Judith Block, are indeed, in the words of that specious quote, too big to take offense and too noble to give it. It is an honor and a privilege to share the stage with them this evening. Thank you very much.